Texas A&M will be rocking the Icy Whites as they go on the road to face Notre Dame in South Bend, Indiana, Saturday night. Kickoff is scheduled for 7:30 p.m. Eastern, 6:30 Central, and 5:30 here in Mountain Standard Time. Guys, let me just say I've really enjoyed the jersey reveal videos that the A&M media team has been producing for about the past year and putting out on Twitter. That's been a highlight of my Thursday. Speaking of Thursday, it is September 11th, 2025. Um, yeah, big day today and a big one in 48 hours as the Aggies are set to go on the road to face the Fighting Irish. Guys, before we dive into this matchup, at the beginning of the season, the very first episode, as I started this up again, I shared with y'all why I'm doing this podcast, and I just kind of felt the desire to share with you how I'm doing this. I shared how this idea started, how long ago it started. If you don't remember, go check out that episode. But I wanted to start this episode off a little differently than I have in the past. And honestly, I couldn't do it without giving credit where credit is due. For those of you who don't know me personally, and even for those of you who do, um, you guys know I am a believer and follower of Jesus Christ, and I would not have the confidence, the passion, or the desire to do what I'm doing here today without Him. There's a Bible verse that's been on my mind and my heart. It's 1 Corinthians chapter 10, verse 31, that says, whether you eat or drink or whatever you do all to the glory of God. And that's simply what it's all about for me. And that's what I want this podcast to be about. Obviously, it's about A&M football, but every opportunity I get to glorify Him, I will take it. Guys, without further ado, let's talk ball. Howdy, howdy, fans of the 12th Man. Welcome into this jam-packed episode of Above the Yell. I'm your host, Weston Pope. Guys, thank you for watching. Like and subscribe to the channel. And as always, don't hesitate to comment below or reach out to me if you know me personally. I always love to talk ball. Man, we're about 48 hours from kick. I'm going to be honest. I don't know what to make of this game. I really don't have a thumb on it. I haven't really all week. I think a part of that is just because of the small sample size that we have with Notre Dame. They've only played one game, and there's not a lot that you can take away from that on tape. But with that, I've got hopes, I've got concerns, and I've got a prediction. As always, guys, let's start off by getting to know our opponent first, and that is the Fighting Irish. What are we going to see from them? Well, they lost to the Miami Hurricanes in Week 1, 27-24. That was the last game that Notre Dame played. So they are coming off a very early bye week, and I have mixed opinions about the bye week. There are people out there who say coming off a bye week, you're refreshed, you're ready to go, you're ready to play. There's some validation to that. And on the flip side, there's people who say, well, you go into a bye week, you come out and you have to play a game, could be a little sloppy, could be out of rhythm, be out of groove. I don't really have an opinion one way or the other, but I can see both arguments. And like I said, I don't lean either way. The Fighting Irish have a new quarterback in C.J. Carr. I thought he looked really good and solid against Miami, despite his offensive line, that being the Notre Dame offensive line, having their lowest pass blocking grade ever, and that's according to PFF. Notre Dame, they have Jeremiah Love. I think in that first game against Miami, people expected Jeremiah Love to get a lot of carries, and that simply was not the case. In fact, C.J. Carr led the offense with the most carries, and that being 11. Jeremiah Love, he didn't even get in the double digits for carries. So not real sure what that was about. I think there's a lot of questions out there, a lot of Notre Dame fans who are wondering the same thing. Jadarian Price, considered the backup of Jeremiah Love. However, I think that Notre Dame, both of those backs, Jadarian Price and Jeremiah Love, they're very talented backs, and I think they have the ability to kind of run a double-headed monster there. Jadarian Price, he's another really good running back they have in that room, and he was actually the leading rusher against Miami. So That being said, does Love get more carries? I think if I'm Notre Dame, if I'm Marcus Freeman, if I'm on that staff, I'm looking back at the Miami game and I'm saying, man, I think we left some things out there on the field, and that being uh, not giving Jeremiah Love more carries. I think he's too talented. And I think they're seeing this game against A&M as a huge opportunity to go out and do something big, and that's kind of kickstart their run game, because I think coming into the season, people expected that to kind of be the center focus of their offense is just to run, which is kind of eerily and oddly similar to A&M. I think as A&M fans, a lot of us expected that to be their go-to, and that being Le'Veon Moss and Ruben Owens, Amari Daniels, and that really just hasn't been the case so far. And A&M is 2 games in, Notre Dame is 1 game in. Yeah, as I said, CJ Carr, I thought he had a nice game. He led the team in carries with 11. However, I believe he came out to 1.5 yards per carry. So the Miami defensive line was really good, and I think that's what really won them the game. Obviously, Carson Beck had a good game. That's topic for another time. But just I think the blueprint is there for A&M. But also Notre Dame, their offensive line was pretty poor against Miami. And once again, that goes to all credit to the Miami defensive line. They kind of just took over and they kind of controlled the game and controlled what the Notre Dame offense was going to do. So Notre Dame, the offensive line, essentially they got to have a better week. They got to have a better a bounce back, essentially. And then Notre Dame, they have some wide receivers that are pretty talented. They got Jaden Greathouse, who I thought before the season started is going to be really good for Notre Dame. They have a really talented and large tight end named Eli Raridon. He had 5 catches for 97 yards as a tight end against Miami, so he made a significant impact against Miami. Guys, you have to excuse me. I'm battling some allergies or a cold or something. But anyways, but getting back into it, I think with Jeremiah Love combined, Jadarian Price, kind of a 2-headed running back monster there. I have a feeling that the Notre Dame offensive line is going to play some inspiring football, because they are supposed to have a pretty decent offensive line, not quite as good as they had last year, but I think they know that they can be better, and they did not really display that against Miami. I think also Jaden Greathouse at wide receiver will get some more involvement, and then I still think tight end, he's a big guy. I believe he's 6'7", 250 pounds, so really big tight end. He could cause some big issues. Flipping over to defense for Notre Dame, Al Golden is out. He was a defense coordinator there last year. I believe Al Golden went to the NFL, took a job there. So enter Chris Ash. What are we going to see from Ash and his kind of scheme? Well, from that first Miami game, we saw kind of a 50-50 between zone and man. Last year, Notre Dame was really known for simply just running man coverage. That's just simply man on man. And so, but in the Miami game, it was really balanced. It was a mix between zone and man. So I'm going. I think as far as the tape goes, Notre Dame through the week, if I had to guess, they're looking at what A&M has in Casey Concepcion and Mario Craver, those guys being able to create separation and things like that. I think Notre Dame is looking at this as maybe working a little bit more zone and having a zone scheme throughout the game. And I can see that outweighing their man schemes. And then on top of that, these Notre Dame corners, once again, are not to be overlooked. They had a really good secondary last year, and I think they have possibly a good secondary this year. They got Christian Gray and Leonard Moore. Leonard Moore is actually supposed to be one of the best corners in the country. The Notre Dame, they did lose Xavier Watts to the league. I believe he was the best or one of the best safeties in the country last year. So, all that being said, yeah, Notre Dame, they're a well-rounded team. They have a lot of ability, a lot of skill guys, and so it's going to be an intriguing matchup. Jumping into A&M, what are we going to see from them? Well, I think this is a great opportunity to get Le'Veon Moss more carries, Reuben Owens, Amari Daniels, EJ Smith. I think this is kind of a time to flex that running back room that we as A&M fans believe that they have. Um, we haven't seen a lot of that yet. Like I said, it's really been kind of in the opposite direction versus UTSA versus Utah State last Saturday. Once again, just saw an offense that was pass heavy, and I think the reason for that is simply just to get Marcel and his receivers and guys like that kind of broken in a little bit, especially if you get into games where you really have to depend on that. So, yeah, and then the offensive line for A&M. Don't know how much they've really been tested yet. Once again, it was UTSA and Utah State back to back weeks. Notre Dame, they are supposed to have a pretty decent defensive line. This will be a major test for A&M's offensive line, who is projected to be one of the best offensive lines in the country. Between all the guys, all the veteran guys they have with and the amount of snaps that they have played. Between Ruben Fothery, Trey Zune, offensive line, gotta be able to continue to be good in pass protection. They've been good so far through 2 weeks. And like I said, I think those games were used as an opportunity to kind of break in this kind of I want to say these new weapons that we have at the wide receiver position. I expect Marcel to be more involved in the run game, maybe a little bit more. It kind of depends. I don't know how banged up he is. He kind of had a little scare there towards the end of Utah State last Saturday. Looks like he took a hit to the lower back. They did announce pretty quickly that he was fine and he could have returned to the game. However, with the flow of the game and the way he was going, they decided to just rest him and sit him, which was wise. So Marcel is expected to be good to go, and hopefully I don't see a way that you don't get him involved in the run game, especially being on the road, being in a tough environment. Notre Dame and their fans are going to bring it. They got a lot of tradition around there. So, yeah, get him involved early, get him comfortable, and then defensively switching over. We've got to see a better run defense. Robert Henry Jr. in week 1 rushed for nearly 200 yards, got A&M on their heels several times. And you just simply, if you want any chance of winning this game, you have to go in, you have to continue to clean up the run fit issues. Now, granted, they did seem to do that against Utah State. It looked like a little bit, quite a bit different on the defensive line. But man, you got to continue that. There's got to be continuity there. And defensively, there's got to be a quick start. Excuse me. There's got to be a quick start defensively as far as not getting behind the 8 ball early. If A&M can go, on their first defensive drive of the game, if they can force a 3-and-out or even I would be happy with only allowing 3. Being on the road, being in their home environment, if they only allow Notre Dame to score a field goal on their first drive, and I would be happy about that, truthfully. But yeah, corners got to step up. Des Ricks, he's been pretty phenomenal so far. Once again, hard to really take all this given the opponents they've played so far, but it has been inspiring. So corners got to step up. Like I said, Des Ricks, you got Will Lee, and then you got Tyreek Chappelle playing nickel. You've got Marcus Ratcliffe playing safety. So yeah, secondary, they got to be on their A game as well. It's just not easy on the road. The margin of error is so slim across the board, especially when you are playing a top 10 team that is Notre Dame. as I said, don't get behind the 8 ball early, and simply get pressure on Carr. That kind of goes hand in hand with the run defense being better. I think we also have to get pressure on Carr. That's exactly what Miami did. They made him uncomfortable pretty early, and that kind of controlled the flow of the game. And I think the blueprint for A&M is there. I would be watching a lot of that Miami film, seeing what Miami was able to do to simply get Carr on his heels, and that was even tough because, like I said, I thought Carr played pretty well. It was his first official start, and yeah, I thought he played good, and I can see why Marcus Freeman named him the starter. So with that, all that being said, how does Notre Dame win? I think it's simply by running Love and Price against a suspect defensive line. I think A&M's defensive line is suspect. I think Love and Price combined could run the ball all over the yard on us, and that I would say that is probably my biggest fear. It's simply just not easy. We lost 3 defensive linemen to the draft this past year. It's not easy to replace those guys, and it has been quite some time that we have seen this issue at A&M, and um, I'm afraid of that. I would say that's my biggest concern is Love and Jadarian Price just being able to run all over these guys. But on the same note, I think if Notre Dame wins this game or wants to win this game, their O-line has to bounce back and simply just provide better protection for Carr. As I said, they had the worst pass blocking grade, I believe, that they've ever had, and that was a 25.2 according to PFF. So they got to have a bounce back game, and then obviously the home field advantage. That's always the case. I mean, being at home, playing at home with your home crowd, that to me, depending on the opponent, that could give you a 3-point edge just being at home. So that's kind of the blueprint to how Notre Dame wins. How does A&M win? For me, it's defensive turnovers. They got to force them. I thought in the last 2 games there's been opportunities, which you love to see. You love to see opportunities there. Unfortunately, A&M did not get those turnovers. But the fact that they are creating those opportunities is simply good enough for me. But I think in this game, if A&M wants to win, they have to force a defensive turnover. Because in a game like this on the road, that simply could be all that it takes. And I think A&M, they need to control the clock with a balanced attack, and then just simply keep the offense on the field. I think we need to see more balance between passing and running. I believe that we will. And I just need the offensive line to get a push early. And then special teams. That's another another avenue for A&M to win. We've seen KC Concepcion house one on a punt. That was in the first game of the season. He's been electric. We've seen Terry Bussey. He's been kind of the return man on kickoff. And he's had some good returns. He makes it look easy. So I think special teams is going to be huge. And once again, it's just the margin of error is so slim. And then our offensive line and defensive line rises to the occasion. The offensive line, I have high hopes for. The defensive line, like I said, still concerned there. I think our defensive line is a little suspect at times. I think we saw it against UTSA. But it's got to get cleaned up, and it's got to be ready to go and good, because this game could be kind of a momentous, program changing kind of game, especially if you walk out of there with a win. I know I predicted A&M to go 9-3 on the season. If they walk out of here with a win on Saturday, that still doesn't, my prediction doesn't shift or change. But yeah, I think if there's one thing that I am sure of, is that most of the time teams that play A&M seem to always bring their A game. They could lay a goose egg the week before against an inferior opponent, but come time to play A&M, they're going to be a totally different team and play their best ball. So I expect that from Notre Dame. If A&M can find a way to play their best ball and their brand of ball on the road, limit mistakes, all those things, then A&M does have the opportunity to come out of there with a win. However, brings me to my final prediction. I got the winner of this game going into the 30s as far as the score goes. I don't think it's going to be quite as similar as last year's game. Last year's game was a final score of 23-13 with Notre Dame pulling away late. However, as I said, I think the winner of this game gets into the 30s, and both teams could get in the 30s, but I think the winner will be there for sure. I got Notre Dame winning 38-28 at home in South Bend. I think my reasoning is simply because our defense, they it's kind of what lost us the last 4 games of the season last year, and I haven't really seen anything so far this year that says, hey, they've completely turned this thing around. All that being said, give them grace. I understand that they have had to replace some guys, and you just have you work with what you got. I think that being said, I think A&M does have a talented defense. I think that they could progress and get much better come season's end, and I hope that's the case. But I think Notre Dame is looking at this game, and they're looking at the weaknesses and the holes that this defense has shown. And I think they're able to come out with a 10-point win. So I got Notre Dame 38-28. Guys, that is all that I have. Thank you for watching. I appreciate it if you made it this far. Guys, please like and subscribe. Comment below. I'd love to hear your predictions, your input on this game. And as always, gig 'em.